Welcome friends, and I welcome on your behalf Mr. Ron. So let us start with the SWA, formerly known as FWA. FWA is SWA now, Screenwriters Association, and we have all the writers from all formats of the screens as member. So I thank you, Anju, that he has provided this opportunity. SWA is doing well as far as this being chairman of this event subcommittee. I'm very happy to have this event tonight, and we have a very good calendar in coming months. We are organizing a very big event on 12th Feb. Bhojpuri films event, Bhojpuri films, Kal Aaj Aur Kal. You all are invited into that. For today, we have Mr. Ron with us, and Mr. Ron, we are going to have 1.5 hour very good and very learning as far as TV writing is concerned. So let me call Anju Rajagoli to welcome Mr. Ron Osborn. Please, Anju.
Well, you will notice this is the Orient, this is Asia, an old culture. We have a lot of ceremony. We like that. We like all these formalities. So I'm going to sort of ensure that you also enjoy it. Yeah? Robin, I would please request you to come and formally welcome Ron with a bouquet. So this ceremony also has to be performed. Ron, please.
Welcome to SWA, Ron.
Robin happens to be one of our senior most film writers with I think about 8. How many films do you have created, Robin?
I forgot to count.
When was the last count?
31.
75 films, Ron.
And most of them are super hit.
Yeah, a lot of them are very big hits. Yeah, so Robin, can you imagine the amount of money he's earned? Okay. Ron, apart from being one of the most successful and well-known writers from Hollywood, there is, I think, nary a big director or big filmmaker that he has not engaged with. From Spielberg to Lucas to a whole lot of other respected names, whose work we have seen and which we have liked. Plus, he's done some pioneering work in television, and that is his mainstay. And television writing in America is seeing some of the finest writing in the world today. Now we also have our senior people who are actually serving as catalysts to ensure that this transition to better writing, to also better formats like the finite series, episodic stuff is going to take place. So I was mentioning about Ron, that he has been, apart from being a successful writer, he's been a teacher for a very long time. And that I was very, very reassured to hear. And openly to the workshop, he was telling them that the only reason I began teaching is because I felt I had more to learn. And he said with every lecture, every interaction that he has, he goes away enriched. Whether the students feel that, okay, we've got so much. And he said, you have no idea how much I get out of that. As I speak, as I explore, I learn. So this also will be one of those mutually enriching sessions. I am confident that it will be. So without further ado, Ron, I'm going to pass you on to the two trusted hands of Mr. Vinod Ranganath, who, as I mentioned to you, has been, again, one of the pioneers in daily soaps. So he's one of the earlier television writers. He's a veteran by now, very well respected, very credible, and he's been a teacher for the last 12, 13 years he's been teaching, and he teaches at both these institutes which are in India, which treat screenwriting as a specialized sort of department. One is Whistling Woods, where you taught, and the other is, of course, Film and Television Institute of India, which is the National Film School, which is supported by the government, West University private. So Vinod's been straddling both television, so he's really like a colossus when it comes to pedagogy in television writing. So I'm sure it will be a scintillating discussion. So Vinod, I'm handing Ron over to your reliable hands, please.
How's the process of the management? How do you go about making a presentation?
It is in some ways considerably different, and then there's some overlap. Either myself or I've worked as an individual, I've worked with a partner. My longest partner, I've been together this since 1978. I have another partner that I work with from time to time, and also myself. And as a solo writer. But what you would do is you would come up with an idea, and you would go to your agent first.
Right.
And your agent hopefully has some sense have some kind of input in terms of then where we go to shop it, to pitch it. And there's a few ways to go, but largely you then go to the networks and you pitch to the network. And if they like it, they then commission a pilot script. And then that script gets written and you get paid for it. And then, I should back up. You know, we have a what we call primetime network, which is every night from 8 o'clock to 11 is prime time. Is that the same here? And it's all national. I mean, all our networks are on at the same time, etc. Okay. So let's say I go to my agent and I say, I have an hour-long procedural, but here's the twist, and he or she says, okay, NBC is looking for something at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. And you go to NBC and they go, boy, that would be just great for 9 p.m. Tuesday, and I commission the script. Now, the other thing you don't know is how many other scripts they're commissioning. Could be 30. So then you write your script, you get notes, you rewrite it, assuming you then survive the executive decision to go ahead and greenlight it. It goes to a pilot. Like your process, once the pilot is shot, it then goes to audience testing. The funny thing to me about audience testing is that almost every show that goes on the air has tested, the cliche is through the roof. But why do we have so many flops? I don't know why we go through this process. But they certainly test well.
So there's something similar here.
Yes. Now, there's some creative things I want to get back to, though, in terms of the interaction with the network in a moment. But it's a very steep funneling of material that is commissioned to what gets on the air. Over the years, my partner and I, and I include my other partner, I've sold over 30 pilots. Of those, they were all commissioned, the scripts were commissioned. 6 went into production. So 24 didn't. 24 didn't make it past that. Of those, 2 went on the air. Of those, 1 lasted past the first season to the 4 seasons. We've also, my partner and I, we rewrite a lot of pilots too for others, but this notion of the network being the producer and also being the creative desk where that buck stops is a little scary to me. The network, once you establish yourself, they do have a certain amount of respect for the writers they hire. They do, and we have been offered shows to show run. I was just talking to someone about a show we had on called Northern Exposure. I don't know if that ever made it over here, but it was a very, very quirky, wonderful show that lasted 4 seasons. I was under contract, my partner were under contract to Universal, and they were having some problems negotiating exec producers' contracts for the 4th season. They asked us if we would be willing to take the show over, and it fell through. I don't remember if we outright said no, or we were just rooting for them to make the deal. Because we were such fans of the show, there was nothing we could add to it. The voice was established, all we could do is take it downhill. So networks there have, once you prove yourself, in certain mediums, and my partner and I started in half-hour comedy, we sold half-hour comedy, we went on to hour comedy and hour drama, and animation. So we have cachet in all of those arenas. Doesn't mean it's easier for us to sell. We still have to have a concept they like. We still have to pitch it very well. We still have to have a hook. So that's a huge difference. And I guess hearing this, I consider ourselves very lucky in that respect. They do collaborate with us. Sometimes it's benign. Sometimes they can kind of force the issue. Let's say a piece of casting. We had a pilot, one of the best things I thought we ever wrote for CBS, and they wanted an actress, Terry Hatcher. At the time, this was the early 90s. We had an actress, I'm just blanking on her name now, and we fought to get her, and we got her. And our show didn't go on the air. I strongly suspect it would have greatly improved our odds had we agreed to Terry Hatcher, who was perfectly fine. Just, we so wanted the other actress whose name now I'm blanking on. The pilot turned out very well. It didn't go. So, they're your partner until they're not.
So where does the producer come in?
Well, again, this started beginning in the late 70s, early 80s. Up until that point, you did have a producer, a non-writing producer, who would then hire the writers, who would then guarantee the deadlines, who would guarantee the scripts, everything. I'm not quite sure how it evolved. It happened around me. It was happening as I was coming into the business in 1980. But the show that I was on at that time was Mork and Mindy with Robin Williams. And we still had a line producer, non-writing, but we also had 2 writing producers. They were all they ran the show together. By the time I got to Moonlighting, which would be 1985, almost all shows were run by writing producers called showrunners. And at that point, we are the ones who pitch, we are the ones who sell, we are the ones who now guarantee. Now, we hire writers, we hire line producers to make sure the whips are cracked and deadlines are met, that leave us free to be the creative. But does that answer your question?
Yeah.
So, one second. That means the shows that you write, you produce?
Yes. Yes, and so we get to sit in all casting. We get to sit in editing. We're the ones who lock picture. We sit with the music people and spot the music.
You do everything.
We do everything. And it's daunting, but it's very satisfying.
So it's a creative call all the way.
I'm sorry?
It's a creative call all the way. I mean, all creative decisions you make.
And you choose the director?
You know what? On the times I've run shows, we have 22 episodes for a season. Excuse me. And I have favorites I work with, but I can't pick 22 directors.
Yeah.
I might pick 3 or 4 people that I've worked with that I know can deliver.
So where do they come from then?
There's a pool. There's at the Directors Guild, there's established TV directors.
Like David Fincher in House of Cards, we
Yes.
did a pilot and then later
That's
on-
true. Yeah. And he's picked a very good level of directors, and feature directors in fact. He can get them. Yeah.
So basically what you're saying is that what I understand is that what has happened now in television today here, as I was telling you, is that the writer is becoming the producer. The channel is encouraging the writer to be the producer of the show. That's the trend that's been going on in the last 3 to 4 years. And increasingly, it's the writer who's becoming the producer of the show, or the writer is a creative producer, along with the producer as a partner, to produce a show in television. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think probably the channels here, I mean, from the 5 networks we have, 3 of them are from America. So probably that's why that trend is started here, where they are making the writer as the producer.
Well, first of all, it makes sense. I mean, it consolidates vision. You don't have someone over you who might have veto power. It sounds like. The other thing we do, we get a little creative with our producers. For instance, we were hired to be on a show that we didn't quite want to be on, so we, rather than take exec producer, even though the buck stopped at our desk, we took consulting producers. On the West Wing, oh gosh, how to say this delicately. Aaron Sorkin's a piece of work, but he wouldn't give us exec producer. We had to take co-exec producer. We didn't want co-exec producer. So we then took, I think we took consulting producer there as well. Co-exec producer has kind of a second level, it's a perfectly fine title. But we were at a point in our careers where we were kind of taking a step backwards to do that. So we did, only to find out later when we were nominated, the show was nominated for an Emmy, it stopped at co-exec, so anything other. So so we get kind of creative on that too. And some networks or studios will give a producer credit rather than give a bump in pay. Okay, you've been on now for another season, we're going to give you, sweeten the pot a little, and you're going to be a producer. Well, that's actually not a bad thing, because then suddenly they can leave that show with producer credit, and their agent can now shop them as a producer. So it's, we barter a little bit.
Yeah. But you also got some co-producer, assigned creative producer kind of titles in some of your shows, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah. We there's a show that I was talking to the class about that I hope has not and will not make its way over here. It was on one of our networks called CW, and it was called Beauty and the Beast. And
Yeah,
it's this.
that's the one.
Yes.
Yeah, it's already on it.
It's already here.
It's already.
Yeah. Well, we're on the 3rd season. What was happening in America is that it had kind of leveled off in terms of audience, but also it was supposed to be this epic romantic love story. Now it was fashioned as a modern day procedural. She's a cop, he's this hunky beast, and it was kind of dreadful. We were brought in to bring some romantic comedy to it, some banter, and the network brought us in. But the showrunner really didn't want to change things. So we found ourselves in a very awkward position of writing stuff. When we were in the writer's room, we were breaking the stories with the staff. But when we wrote our draft, he kept all our structure, he completely rewrote us, and we saw the writing on the wall. Our input was not going to be used. We did not want any kind of executive credit on that to begin with, so we took, I think, again, consulting on that, I believe.
It's consulting.
Yeah.
It's consulting.
And at the end of that, we left and laughed.
Okay, so when you have a producer, you have an executive producer, you have a consulting producer. What are the roles that they play?
Again, there's a lot of.
No, I tell you why I'm saying this. Here, what happens is that we have a producer. Okay, so even if a writer has become a producer, then we have what is called a supervising producer. We have an executive producer, and we have an entity called the creative director. You'll be very surprised to know. The creative director is somebody very big in Hindi television shows. Okay, so what does the creative director do? I have actually no idea. But I've met with a lot of them. I have a lot of writer friends here who will also agree with me. The creative director, when the whole idea started off, was supposed to be a liaison person between the producer, before the channels took the call, and the various departments, which means the writing team, the director, the set design, the editor,
Casting.
and everything, yes. So they are supposed to, coordinate the whole process of making the show. What has happened here over the years is that the creative director is the one-point person who has to deal with the channel and with all the departments. And in a way, the creative director becomes a kind of a showman.
सर वो EP का थोड़ा सा fancy नाम.
So now EP, the executive producer, what they have today is the person who is an associate of the creative director on the sets. It's very confusing, but that's how it is.
If I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like the creative director frees up the exec producer to focus more on the creative aspects.
Yes.
Doesn't sound unvaluable.
But what happens is that this creative director then becomes the person who's taking the creative call on the entire show. And the writer who's become the producer is nowhere in the picture.
So decisions are made around the writers.
By the creative director and the channel
Okay,
and the broadcaster.
We don't have anything like that. Basically, exec producer is exactly that. Co-exec producer is directly under, answers to, and then we have whatever we want, supervising producer, consulting producer, creative producer. Those become very fungible. They can be what we want them to be. And again, sometimes we negotiate with titles. And look, writers, and that happened when we were hired on Moonlighting. We come off a sitcom called Night Court, and we had gotten our producer stripes there, even though we had no producing of that show whatsoever. We were never in casting, we never saw a rough cut, nothing. We were just given the title. But then my agent was able to go to Moonlighting and say, well, look, they're already producers. You should at least make them a producer. Well, they've never done hour-long before. So I think there was some, I'd have to go back and see. I think we had some tricky thing where we had to get through, a season is 22 episodes. They order 13 in the back 9. I think as long as the show lasted 13, we came on as executive story editors. Again, whatever this means. And then when the show got picked up, then we survived the cut. The show survived the cut. We then became a producer for the back 9, and then we kept bumping into exec producer 5.
We don't have a very professional way of doing a pitch the way they do it in Hollywood.
Doing a pitch?
Yeah.
Like, what I understand, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there is a pitch season. Right? So between 2 seasons, you have a pitch season where people prepare for the pitch. There's a particular time frame every year.
Yes. It's over our summer. It goes into November, late summer, early fall. And that's when the networks look at the slots and the weak points they have. They look at the pitches they have. They decide what they want. The pitches are usually, the pilots are usually ordered half hours before late November, hours by mid-December. And then in come the scripts top of the new year, and that's when they begin plugging holes and seeing what goes where.
So as I told you, we don't have a pitch like that. So the question is that, what is it that makes a writer feel that a particular concept or a particular idea that he's got is good enough for a pitch there?
Well, again, the gold standard for us is what's new and different.
No, because the reason why I ask is that, see, here it depends on a particular trend. There is a trend that a particular channel is looking for a subject like this or something like that. So how do you create shows there? Is it also dependent on that aspect?
Well, again, and this is where frankly, we have an agent and manager infrastructure that's helpful in this department. But even if there's a trend, you want to come in with a twist, an element, an angle that gives you the creative confidence to say, here's why you should listen to me. When we have an idea, and I'll give you an example in just a moment, the first thing we do is we call our agent. I was with, for instance, for 17 years, I was with creative artists in Los Angeles. It's one of the big three. And one day this word came to me, which was nunslinger. And I just thought, oh my God, I've never seen this. What does this mean? And I Googled the word to see if any film, TV show had ever been done where there was a nun who was also a gunslinger. Now that just fascinated the hell out of me, but I'm also fascinated with Joan of Arc. And so what I did is I fashioned a story that had to do with instead of Joan of Arc kicking the British off French soil, it had to do with the latter-day Joan of Arc in Mexico, a nun who was helping to get the French off of Mexican soil. And it became a story about possible faith and or madness. I won't take you through it, but we pitched it to Sony, where a producer there by the name of Devon Franklin, who turns out religious material. I mean, oh God, what's the big religious film? It was, I'm sure, I don't know, maybe over here, but he loved it, and we developed artwork for, oh, I'm sorry, then we expanded it. It became actually kind of Italian Western in the sense that it was about a nun, an imam, and a rabbi. And again, in the best, I'm also a huge Italian Western fan. And it was really about ecumenicalism. Ultimately, it was about working together against a common enemy. The religions working together, if you will. And that was the thematic thing. So we developed then a artwork, which I'd never done before. I got an artist who worked on the George Miller, the Mad Max graphic novel, and he did the art for me. I hired him. And we then, and I've never done this before, I worked out a pitch, and I pitched it to him several times. Normally, I've not gone in with the producer before, I've gone in as the producer. And he helped me hold the pitch.
So, how do you actually go about the pitch, in the sense that is there a team of executive producers or people from the broadcast whom you go and actually stand and you narrate, and there's a pitch that happens?
Yes.
So do you just go with the story and the characters and the idea, or do you have a storyboarding? Or
no. You just come in, and as Anjum probably sat through, I'm a huge believer in theme. So it's, this is a story about this kind of character and this kind of situation, and it deals with the religions coming together and working, against the common enemy. And then in pitching features, you pitch the story with the characters. In pitching television, and I'm sure there's overlap here, you really stress the characters, because ultimately the situations are set up, but it's the characters that are going to take you to season after season after season. So what makes them tick? What are the interrelationships? What are the arcs? I've just sold a pilot to a company that's the production arm of Turner Broadcasting in America. It's a drama with a horror element, and we basically pitched we basically came in and pitched all as an ensemble, and we pitched all the characters and all the interrelationships without telling them at all how it pays off. This person relates to this person on this level, or this person and this person. These two couples overlap here. We talked about all the interrelationships in such a way that is a springboard for a season 1, 2, 3, and 4.
So you don't emphasize much on the story part of it as such. You just give the character arc
And the
and
world.
world.
And the world.
And the world where they're based in. Right?
Yes, and oftentimes the world, the pilot story is encapsulated in the world a little bit, you know? Obviously, when you're going to establish a nun and 2 other religious figures working together, they're probably going to meet in the pilot. You know, they're not already together. Here's another thing, and I don't know if this is true here or not. American networks have traditionally not been as crazy about what's called premise pilots. And that's where you, in the first episode, set up the premise, and then the second episode, things kind of take off. The networks really like the premise to be in the first.
What works more?
So that,
What works more in television, characters or the plot?
I'm not sure I understand. Would you say what works more?
I think what he's trying to say is that in the long run, a show is sustained by characters.
Characters.
Or
On television, characters. Feature, plot. What's promotable? What's the hook? In television, characters. You know, I mean, you know, take any. Well, you know what? I don't get the CSI shows. I mean, I admire them. They're so clever, and I can't do that. But those plots are so clever, to me, they dominate the characters. And that's what people tune in to see, you know? But whereas the shows that I've been on, like Moonlighting and West Wing, and even, let me go back to Beauty and the Beast for a minute. Here's what was so frustrating. The showrunner had never developed the characters beyond their archetypes. And as we were breaking the stories, this was the 3rd season. There were writers there who had been from the first, and writers there that had only been there from the second. So here we're starting the 3rd. Every writer in that room except us had been there already. And one day, in breaking stories and frustration, I said, what do these characters do on their day off? What do they do for fun? They live in New York, they must see plays. What kind of plays do they go to? You know, what music do they listen to? Anything. And none of the writers, they just kind of shrugged in mutual frustration, you know? And because of that, we could instill banter, we could do jokes, but we really couldn't get underneath the characters. That show became just a very kind of comic book procedural, you know, and that's why it never really grew past, you know, it's kind of core audience. So it's characters that keep the show going. Development of characters, the evolution of characters. Modern Family, it's a sitcom. Wonderful, wonderful characters. Really well-defined characters. I look forward to seeing these people and what they're going to do, you know, and welcoming them into my, my house.
So the agent's role ends with connecting you with the channel, or if the agent sometimes will want the pitching also, in case pitching is not your strong point. For example,
Oh no, agents never pitch.
They never.
No, but I've had. When agents are really excited about a concept, sometimes they will come to the pitch. You know. No, usually it's just you against, and you're pitching to the development execs. You're not pitching necessarily to the people who can say yes or no. I mean, they can say no, they can't say yes. You know, they can say, geez, it's not something we're looking for. But if they like it, it goes to their superiors, they're the people who then say yes. But you're usually pitching to a room of anywhere from 3 to 5 people.
Okay. So yeah, I understand that at the end of the day that the audience actually connects with the character, right? So if I am hooked on to House of Cards, okay, so it's Frank Underwood whom I want to see, and I want to see every episode, every season, how dirty and how sinister can he be, right? So I've pitched Frank Underwood, I've pitched his wife, I've pitched the White House as the backdrop. I have kind of given the whole scenario, the way you pitched it, right? Now, a Modern Family is a comedy. So, from what I understand, you've set the characters, you've set the ambience. Then it is an episodic to episodic story level it goes. Correct?
Yes.
There is no linear story forward going as such. It's more on an episodic or a theme or whatever. Like Everybody Loves Raymond, for example. It's like one incident they've taken, and today this is the story of this episode. But now, for example, a season of Desperate Housewives, House of Cards, Newsroom, Game of Thrones, any of these. So there is a long story arc that takes place.
Yes.
Correct? So now I have pitched to a channel. They have captured the setting, the universe where the characters are going to be. They've loved the characters. The channel has commissioned me to go and write a pilot. In the pilot, I establish my premise. Right? Once it gets commissioned, what is the process that you go through? Is it then that you start writing the arc?
Yes. Then you hire a staff. When they say, okay, you're on, you've got 13 episodes, and you're on in September.
So they only commission 13 first, and the back end is the 9 later.
Well, certain producers who have a huge track record, like a Don Belisario or they sometimes will get over.
Or David E. Kelly or something.
Yeah. Although lately he hasn't been.
Yeah, he hasn't been.
But yeah, then you hire the staff, then you begin working out the stories. Now, here's the other thing that's different, and again, in terms of collaboration. So, we have sold a pilot, we've sold the concept, we've sold the characters, we've hired the staff, we are now writing the scripts. What we do is we have to clear all our stories first with the studio. So let's say we've sold a series to Warner Brothers Studio. They sell it to then we then go sell it to CBS. Every story we have to run by the studio, get their notes. Then we have to run by the network, get their notes. Then when the scripts are written, same thing. So the art does develop. Now, even though we kind of pitched an art, maybe loosely, we have a lot of freedom in what those episodes are to get us there. And then freedom insofar as what to come up with, but we still have to run everything by 2 sets of masters. In the end. And look, if the show doesn't perform to the degree that the network was expecting, then they can be a little more consistent on making changes, or adding casting, or substituting casting.
So you have about two months to write the story, and the entire.
To get scripts going, and it's an assembly line, so you have scripts in various levels of development. That you have a little more freedom in the early episodes, and then by the end you are playing beat the clock by episode 22.
Right.
So, my question is, without knowing the journey of the character, how can it create good characters, nice characters, interesting characters?
Again, we're talking the television process. So one of the things.
No, I'm not talking the process. I'm talking about the writer. How can a writer imagine interesting characters without knowing his journey?
Well, I do know his journey. I just don't know exactly the actual episodes. I know emotionally what his journey is, and that's the important thing, or her journey is. And if I've done my job really well, I've hired really talented writers who are going to have ideas I haven't thought of, that I can pick and choose from, or that augment what I already believe. And this is very common, and I'm sure it's common here. You work with people you trust, and I've worked with before. I've hired 2 writers on 2 separate shows because they were right for this particular kind of comedy we were doing, for instance, and they come in with their ideas. So when I pitched, I have a sense again of what that emotional journey is. I don't necessarily know what the story journey is. That's part of the discovery process.
So, the main writer who's creating the show, he writes the initial episodes, or he just hires the writing team and then the process starts?
Well, both. In the case, this show, there was an animated show that I don't think ever made it over here. It was my favorite thing I've ever done. It was an adult animated series called Duckman. And it was very edgy and dark. Dark. And my partner and I wrote the pilot. We went on to do 70 episodes. We rewrote every pilot, some of them extensively. We never took another credit. So, you know, we had a good staff, but we had to, and I'm proud to say that we discovered the writer who would go on to write the movie Horrible Bosses, and as his first boss in Hollywood, I hope I had some influence on that. But there was a particular voice to that show we wanted. It was an intelligent show about a kind of stupid protagonist, and it was a very hard line to walk. And so we rewrote heavily. At least the first 2 seasons. Probably by the 4th season, our work was much easier. You know, but the pilot is the only one we wrote from scratch ourselves, and we broke all the stories with the writers. We had story ideas, they had story ideas. We had to run them by network, studio, and it was collaborative.
I think what the question that he's asking, the reason why I think he's asking is that because we do the daily soap opera here. Okay, so in a month we're churning out, depending on which network we are, you know, it's between 22 episodes to 26 episodes to 30 episodes a month. So to sustain that kind of storytelling, we need to have some semblance of an idea of what the plot is, even at the time of pitching. Because that idea per se, not just the character, the idea per se should have the legs to run the distance, so to say. Yeah?
And that I've never done.
Yeah. So in a 22 episode, 26 episode show that you do, when you create this writing team and you hire your writers, what is the process? I mean, what do you start off with? You say that this is the character's journey, so now you work out the character, or you have. How do you go about writing an episode?
Well, in the show that we've just sold to Turner, I have a 14-page document that outlines the next 3 seasons. That were notes that I was keeping as we were pitching, and this other partner has had input on as well. So I have, in the most general sense, I know what the first 3 season arcs are. And it's very complicated because there's probably 10 characters, 10 speaking prominent characters. And that there's other side characters too. But we know what each of them and where they intersect. We just don't know quite how we're getting there. We know we're driving from LA to New York, but we don't know whether the northern route, the southern route, zigzag, you know. But we do know, again, where we want to go. There are certain benchmarks we need to hit. At the end of each season, you have your little cliffhanger. So at the end of the first season, in the A story, this happens. We know at the end of the first season what happens in the B story, etc. How we're going to get there, we haven't quite nailed down, but I'm confident in the truth of where we're going, in the narrative truth of where we're going. That the audience will go with us, will stay with us. You know, if we remain true to that. And again, as I, you know, theme is always your compass. Theme is always pointing you true north, you know. And I'm a big believer in that.
Well, what is your experience? What kind of characters people accept more or enjoy more?
Well, here's the frustrating thing about that. They're very accepting. I think the most frustrating question we ever got, moonlighting became this phenomenon over there, and afterwards, when we left after the 3rd season, it went on for a bit longer, but the networks expected us now to be edgy and come in with characters that had that were non-traditional. And so we go in and pitch that, and they go, well, what do we like about them? Well, you're going to like them because we're going to make them very compelling and we're going to make them relatable, you know, on some level. Might not be a traditional level, but we know our job. And I'll give you a very good example of the show that finally broke that mold. And I would have loved to have been on the pitch for Breaking Bad. You know, school teacher becomes a meth cooker. What do we like about this? Well, in the context of the show, he's a person who is a school teacher. Our education system doesn't take care of its teachers. He finds out he has cancer. He doesn't have a great, you know, medical plan. He finds out from his brother-in-law who works for the Drug Enforcement Agency what a batch of meth goes for. He's a chemistry teacher. Oh geez, I can make one batch, sell that, set up my family, because he's going to die. You know? And so, do you begrudge him this? In the context of a fiction, no. In real life, yeah, you probably would. But there was an emotional connection. You know, he wasn't a bad man, he was doing a bad thing for a good reason. So, man, the audience stayed with him all the way to the end, where he became a drug lord. There is a great scene where in the last season, where he's been separated from his wife, they've had a baby, and he comes back home, and his wife says, how do I know, now that she knows what he does, because he was keeping that a secret, how do I know at some point, at some night, there's going to be a knock at the door? And he says, no, you don't get it. I'm the guy who knocks at the door.
Yeah.
And that was where the arc had become complete. And we went with him all the way. So, again, that situation was so unique and so contextualized, the audience stayed with it. Now I think you can go in and pitch dark characters or characters who have, on the face of things, kind of an ambiguous morality, you know. And this is the other thing that I always believe is all storytelling is emotional. The audience relates emotionally to a character no matter who or what they are. So if you can find that emotional in, and again, sometimes it's thematic, I think an audience stays with you. And now more than ever, because we have all these channels and Vudu and Hulu and streaming, there's a huge appetite out there for new and different, not the same old things. The networks are giving us the same old things. So in America, I can't speak for here, but in America, I think there's a much, well, I'm going out with a nun who shoots and kills people, with a producer who does religious content.
Non-predictable.
Yeah.
What is the system there? I mean, if you have, for example, a Game of Thrones, which is very similar to our kind of storytelling, where there are multiple tracks, multiple characters, they're interlinked, okay? So if the pitch is like what you said, then you just give the universe and the character and the arc and that's it. And then when you start writing and you hire writers and you are writing, what is the process that actually happens there when you have multiple tracks like this?
In terms of keeping them, keeping track of them, I suppose.
Yes.
That's where the exec producer comes in.
Okay.
And that's where every show I've been on, we have a big whiteboard or a big push pins in cards, you know, and that helps keep us on track, you know. Because sometimes you come up with an idea, and it's a great idea, but that won't work until at least episode 8 or 9, when we've already invested in this relationship to play that point. Now we don't know what episode 9 is yet, so we just put it on the whiteboard or the card on the bullet board there, and we know where we want to get by episode 13 or episode 22. But you know, as you plow forward, it's almost like a military campaign. You know, you've got little side wars you fight along the way, but you always know the goal. You always know what the prize is that you're building towards. And again, part of being a good exec producer is hiring people who you feel like are going to bring their voice to bear. And I welcome that. It makes my job easier. You know, there was something I mentioned to this Whistling Woods this week with the best piece of writing advice I ever got. And this is just the way to think in general. And it was about the traditional way of breaking in is the same here as it is there. You write a spec script for a show that you feel like you have something to add to it, right? And if you capture that show, if you capture those characters, if it's a drama, you match the level of dramatic gravitas. If it's a comedy, you match the level of hilarity that they do. Those characters speak like they speak on the show. You fail. You've fallen short. They've already got a staff doing that. highly paid staff. What's new and different about your voice? What are you bringing to the mix? That advice literally started me off. It impacted the way I wrote the first script. It was for a show called MASH. It was a very popular hit, the best written show of its day. And yeah, we came up with something new and different. At that time, we didn't have an episodes guide to see all the shows they had done. I had to go to the library and look at the old TV guides and look at every Monday at 8:30 and write down the synopsis and see what they had done, even though I was a fan of the show. But so when you get that order, which is very daunting and very scary and a little exciting, and you hire those people, what are they? You hire people whose work either you're excited about and what they can bring, or you worked with before and you know they can bring, and work with you or even challenge you.
So in the writer's room, your writing team is actually writing the entire episode.
No. In the writer's room, well, it works a few ways. Let's say on Beauty and the Beast, while we were writing our own script, we were helping all the other, Westwood as well, we were helping the other writers break their stories. And then they would go off.
I'll tell you why I'm asking this question, Ron, just for you to understand what happens here. Because it's a daily soap and we have, as I said, so many number of episodes. We have a main writer who's gone and pitched, who's the producer probably, and so the whole, the plot to a large extent, the character journeys, everything is pitched and it gets approved. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Post that, what happens is that we have something called a story separate, a story writer separate, a screenplay writer separate, who's actually writing a step outline. Okay, and we have a dialogue writer who's separate. Okay, who's writing the dialogues. So it's very different here. Yes. Yes. So I'm explaining that to you.
Yes.
Yeah. So what happens here is technically that there is a broad story writer who's working out the entire plot month after month towards a particular milestone, which he goes and he gets it approved from the channel, from the producer, the creative director, they all go. So that's the monthly arc of this show that he's worked out. Okay. This is further broken down into episodic stories by another writer. Then you have somebody who's writing the step outline, which is the screenplay, what they call it. That's the process here. So I want to know out there, how do you go about doing this? Do you have so many?
First off, I would love someone that, here's your story, here are the characters, and just go the words. I would love that. That sounds wonderful.
That's how it works.
Here, no, you are responsible for everything. The staff kicks in. Okay, let's say you got your order. The first few weeks, you're sitting down and people are pitching one-liners, and it's the broadest kinds of stories. Then you begin to hone in on stories, and then I think I can do that one, or why don't you take that story? And then you give responsibility, or the person came in with the story wants to write it, as is often the case. Where does it fit in the timeline? Then it's really a matter of ordering the scripts, and then everyone working on that particular story, and then the writer going off and doing it. But the writer is responsible for coming up with the scene work, for coming up with the dialogue, for being consistent with our vision of the characters and the arcs and things like that. Boy, that's an amazing piece of compartmentalization, but I get it. I get what's efficient about it. Maybe it's not as creatively satisfying on a certain level, but each one's a craft.
Yes. In America, while writing do you think that the writers carry some kind of social responsibility? Or no, everything is commercial?
Well, yes, I believe this is a for-profit enterprise. You've got to deliver the goods or sink. Responsible. Yeah, there's certain things I wouldn't do. And, I'm trying to think if I've ever been on a show where I feel like what we're doing is, the character of Duckman was based on an underground comic about this kind of unfocused, angry character that we then developed as a TV character. And he smoked. And at first, we didn't think twice about it, you know? And then we realized, you know, well, wait, this is animation. And even though it's going to be on late at night, even though it's written for adults, you know, even though half our audience might be stoned, we don't want kids to see this, you know, and a duck smoking. So in that sense, yeah, I felt this, and I had small children at the time too. So on that level, I did. It's, yeah, other than that, I can't think of a show or a situation I've been in where I've had that conundrum. So I guess the answer to your question is yes, because the one time it came up, I felt to do the right thing versus what would have been the edgier thing, you know? But if you look at a Breaking Bad, which basically is how to become a drug lord, you know, in the end, I still think that show was responsible because he didn't retire fat and happy. You know, he was killed in a hail of bullets, ultimately. A Scarface, I mean, that was what they were building towards, a Scarface ending. I guess I would agree with you.
But then we have a South Park also, right? Which is technically animation, but it is so adult.
Yes. Yeah, and so I marvel at South Park. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Is it so that at the end of the day, it's one writer who is responsible for writing the complete episode, or does the teamwork come in even there? And if so, then how?
So, yes. Ultimately, as the exec producer, I guarantee the script. So I'm responsible for it. Invariably, the scripts will go through my partner's typewriter, sometimes a little, sometimes a lot. So we are yes. And again, you want different voices in the creative process, but in the end, there has to be a homogeneous voice to the series. And that's what the showrunner does. And I was wondering if you have a head writer that probably does that.
Yeah.
Yes.
We call it a script head here.
Yeah, we call it a script head here.
We create so many designations around here.
Yeah.
So many.
Wow.
We love doing that.
Well, you know, that makes residuals a very difficult concept here, doesn't it?
It doesn't exist at the...
Well, I know it doesn't, but at some point it will.
Oh, yes.
Okay, Ron, you've been involved with the show like Moonlighting for quite a few seasons,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, so we go through years, you go through seasons. Right? The one thing that we normally, most of us writers, we get, it's an issue for us, is that somewhere at some point we get stuck. What to do with this guy next? Yeah. We explored practically everything that is possible. All the more because it's a daily soap format, right? And then we are literally banging our heads against the wall. Then what do we do? If we are lucky to get with some bright idea, it moves ahead. Okay? But for you also, it's in a long-running season like this. Do you also face these problems?
Yes, but our process is literally more collaborative. I mean, I can literally walk down the hall and go, you know, grab someone and say, hey, help me out here. You know, the other thing, I was talking about this, I was asked about this in the seminar. After a certain amount of time, and I especially think soap writers would bring this to bear, you do have a certain bag of tricks. You do have things you've done before that in a pinch, okay, I can plug this in here. You know, and we've all done that. You're not happy, but you know, again, this is a for-profit enterprise meant to self-perpetuate through success, and the alternative is unthinkable of not delivering. But look, I remember many times I was doing this action comedy for a while over there with an actress named Natasha Anstridge, and it was fun. It was kind of silly. We didn't want to do the show, but they kind of made it worth our while. And many were the times where I would, you know, have to be down on a set, watching something, and I'm stuck, and I would just bring a writer down with me to pitch back and forth with. And that's a luxury I had, you know, because I couldn't do it. and I didn't have the luxury, I didn't have the time to think of it, and I've got this, show in production that I have to work on this problem scene that's being filmed, and there's fire to put out here. So, again, when you have a staff, you're all in the same lifeboat, and it's you help each other, and it works. This finite division, this labor, the division of labor, that's surprising news to me. It really is.
Okay, so now, a show like Moonlight, you have somebody like Bruce Willis on the one hand, and if you look at Desperate Housewives, I think Terry Hatcher was probably the biggest star before the show came on. So we do have our stars, right? Some of them, couple of them. How difficult does it become when you've created a particular character and it is being played by a star? Where the star comes with a certain image, the star comes with a certain persona, and he's supposed to fit into a particular character. With what you have created. So at the right time, do you tweak the character to suit the star image, or what happens?
No, you write the protagonist that you pitched, that you see, and then you cast to that. In the case, I had nothing to do, oh God, I wish, this name will mean nothing to you. But Bruce was not the first choice. There was an LA DJ named Rick Dees. He was picked, and he turned it down because he was offered 15 episodes of a show called Solid Gold, which was just a weekly top 40 show. And he took that. Bruce was not a known name. Bruce was someone Glenn Caron found and really fought for. So, but what Glenn did is what everyone does. In the case of Duckman, we didn't want, it was an animated show, but we didn't want just a voice talent. We wanted an actor. We wanted a genuine actor. And we had gone through, I don't know, about 120 auditions and some decent names. And I can't tell you how many tapes we listened to. We had cast all the other parts. We had a terrific cast except for Houdini. And we got Jason Alexander he was doing Seinfeld at the time. And I believe he thought this was a one-off. I think because he came in and did a perfect read with his gravelly voice, that he later said if he knew what he was going to do as a series, he wouldn't have made it so gravelly, But no, you write the part and then you look for the person. There is one time where we did this pilot for CBS, and we wrote the part clearly. I mean, just because he's Caucasian, and this African American actor came in and nailed it. And we just thought, oh, we weren't expecting this. It's it helps the vibe and all that. And that's a case where then we actually did tweak a little bit toward him once we cast him.
In a multi-track kind of story like say Desperate Housewives or Game of Thrones and things like that, where unknown people probably who are not as famous come into the show. The show's popularity, because of the way it's written and the way it's performed, it goes up in the ratings and it keeps coming season after season, it gets commissioned. In a scenario like this, is there any pressure for the writer from research or from rating to say that, look, Brie Van Cap is not working, okay? Gabrielle Solis is working a little more. So let's give her a little more prominence. Or do you get,
Always.
Always?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure, why not?
So how do you go about it? In the sense you get to know this before
You
the
go where the
season,
story is.
or it happens as the show's
As the show's going, it's organic.
Yeah.
We were on this show again on the radio here called Night Court with Harry Anderson and John Larroquette. And Harry Anderson was a star. John Larroquette was the find. And he's played such a wonderfully slimy character with this touch of pathos that made it relatable. And we just started feeding more and more to him. And it probably caused some tension. Look, the show Moonlighting was written for Sybil Shepherd.
Yes, she was the first.
She was the first one cast.
She was the star, yeah.
And she was the known name, and then they found this off Broadway guy who had done one episode of something called Miami Vice as a villain, and the mail was going in 5-1 for him, fan mail. Yeah, it caused some tension. But creatively, you can't not do it. Creatively, you go where the strengths are. That's a discovery. You know, that's a happy accident. And why would you walk away from it?
So I have a question.
Yep.
You showed an idea to like work. They like it. They start working with you. After a point, they feel that your team is not delivering to their expectation or what they want. So the copyright is with them.
No.
It's not with them.
No.
It remains with you.
Yes.
But then they say that we want to terminate the agreement and then we want another set of writers.
That happened with Aaron Sorkin on The West Wing. And it wasn't because of the direction he was taking the show. It was because he was not a good showrunner. He was delivering scripts late. That was backing up production. That backed up post-production. That meant more expense on the part of Warner Brothers. They put up with that for 4 seasons, and they finally had enough. And so they let him go, and they brought in John Wells, who was already. It was a John Wells company production, but John Wells became the actual physical showrunner, head writer, etc. So that happens.
So they don't replace him, the entire show will be shut down.
I'm sorry.
The showrunner will not be replaced, cannot be replaced.
Yes, he was replaced.
He was replaced.
He was. Yeah. I butted heads with an actor.
But he gets the credit for the creator of the show.
Okay.
So whatever residuals and everything that comes from the show, he's writing it.
Yes.
He remains the creator of the show. He doesn't. He ceases to be the showrunner. That's what he's. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. He still retains all his rights. He still gets all the checks that are due to him. There was a kind of a romantic dramedy hour-long called Cupid that we had only lasted 13 episodes, and this will never be shown in America, right? The star, no names, but his initials were Jeremy Piven. That was a joke. Anyway, he was the first star in the history of the cathode ray tube who wanted less screen time. This is because he wasn't the most professional. He didn't really know his line. I'm probably in a lot of trouble here. Anyway, we were writing a part. It was called Cupid. He was the central character. He kept saying, "Hey, we got this deep bench of talent. Why aren't you using them more?" Because they're tuning in to see you. So we kept writing the parts for him, and he went to the network and complained about us and said we weren't listening to his notes, etc., and we got fired because no one knows us. They know who Jeremy Piven is, and he was actually doing his job well. He just didn't want to do it as much. And that's the first time it's the only time it's ever happened to me. But the network sided with him.
Okay, so taking from there, as I shared with you before, so if there is a deadlock between the network and the main writer or the showrunner, whose call is the final?
I'm sorry, between who and who?
The network and the showrunner or the main creator of the show.
The
If there
network,
is a
always the network.
The network.
Yeah. Ultimately they're the ones, writing the checks.
Right. So,
okay. They're the ones whose schedule is on the line, and even if they're not creatives, and luckily they don't pretend to be, as opposed to here. But they do sometimes want their ideas to be followed, and we had to I was on a show where they wanted to introduce a character to kind of liven things up that we didn't think in concept would do anything. To liven things up, we lost the battle, we had the character, nothing happened.
But do they give you notes on every episode?
Yes.
Every time, every episode?
Sure, when they're paying $2 million an episode, they have the right, But again, we do have relationships with our executives. And we've got, there were some network executives that I thought were very creative and gave very good notes. And I'm not against notes. You know, you can be in your own little bubble and not see something that you know, a fresh set of eyes. My wife has helped me. She's not a writer. She goes, well, how come this is, you know, why did you do this in the script? Oh, gee, she's right. You know? And they're entitled to their 2 cents. Because in the end, it's their network and they're trusting you.
If the show is not giving you ratings at the end, do they share the responsibility?
Sometimes if they don't promote the show properly, sure. If they force a piece of casting on you that hasn't worked, they will never admit to that. You know. But from our point of view, yeah. You know. And look, sometimes things just don't catch fire. That's no one's fault.
You said that obviously original concepts are welcome in the market, you know, because something unique. But isn't there also a kind of emphasis on fitting in? For instance, here, if a particular theme becomes a hit in a show, you will see 5-6 shows which are similar in theme to that. For example, Supernatural, or you know, something like a child marriage, for instance. But even in US, I've seen that there's a particular format, like a crime procedural with a cop and a gifted character. So you will have a mentalist, you will have a castle, you will have a Lucifer. So does that factor in? Does the channel tell you that this is working right now? So create something accordingly. Do you get that kind of a brief?
What happens is every new development season, the networks, like clockwork, put out their needs. We're looking for on Tuesday at 8 o'clock a family-friendly show with a strong female lead. You know, at 10 o'clock on Thursday, we're looking for a really dark procedural. I don't know how they arrive at these. That's truly a mystery to me. Do they sit in a room and I don't know. But they come out and you look in your list of ideas. Oh, I could sell this to Disney. I can sell this to NBC. I can pitch this over here at Netflix. Things like that. Yeah, there's some overlap. You know, look, the reason, and this used to be really, really true more than ever. You had the big wheel was cops, lawyers, doctors. It was always a new cop show, a new lawyer show, a new doctor show, because that's the automatic conflict. The stakes are a given, life and death. So then along comes a show like Hill Street Blues. Did you ever see this? It was a classic. It was the first cop show about the lives of the cops. Yeah, they still had their, but every week it wasn't, a serial killer in some part of town and we gotta stop him. No, it was an ensemble where they all had their lives that they brought into the job, and the crimes were almost secondary. And that broke the mold. And suddenly we had a whole new style of cop show. It was very successful. It won Emmy after Emmy after Emmy. And the same with Cagney and Lacey. Again, two females, buddy that had not been done before. The procedurals were secondary. The mysteries, or the crimes, it wasn't even mysteries, the crimes were secondary to the lives of these two women. Things like that. But now audiences, again, with so many venues out there, they want more. They want different. They want new. They want different. They want edgier. They want more dramatic adult content.
Okay, purely by going by the writing approach, do you feel there is a difference in approach of writing for a series on a particular broadcasting network compared to writing a series for something like the Netflix or the Amazon?
Yeah, there is. CW in America is going heavily kind of comic book. They have The Flash, they have Green Lantern, they have Beauty and the Beast, and those shows are more archetypal. Okay? Whereas Netflix, House of Cards and Lord knows what else. I mean, bipolar characters. So again, when Netflix, to my knowledge, does not put out the list like the other networks do. They're just kind of open to anything. But when the networks put out their needs, you kind of have to fashion your pitch if you have something towards that network. Yeah, it's a good question.
Ron, how fast do people write the soaps? I mean, how much time a writer is expected to take for writing one episode of a soap?
I couldn't tell you a soap, but I can tell you a half hour or an hour script. First draft,
Yeah, half an hour.
I'm embarrassed to say, is we have 2 weeks. That's an embarrassment of riches compared to what you guys have. Seriously. And then, you get notes and you have a week to rewrite it, and then probably a few extra days to lock it. And then it films.
Ask Vijay how much time we get.
I'm afraid to ask.
No.
Yes.
We have been talking about the series mostly with them, and you're our guest, so the discussion has to be around you. But will you forgive me if I asked you to talk about your fellow screenwriter, Mr. Bo Goldman, and your experience with working with him on the
Meet Joe Black. It was wonderful. What happened is Martin Brest, and this again goes back to Moonlighting, came to us after we came off that show in 1991. Now, the movie wasn't made until 1999. And said, I've always wanted to do an update on this old film, Death Takes a Holiday, which happened to be a film that I knew of. It was kind of a favorite. And the twist was, he wanted a screwball comedy. And we had just come off a screwball comedy show. Bear with me. We pitched, here's, a rich household, basically, and you bring in this character from the outside that turns the household upside down. Classic screwball comedy. And we came up with the plot, characters, and everything. Surprisingly, very close to what's in the finished film. We handed in the first draft, and Martin says, I think we're shortchanging the themes here. I think I was wrong. I think we really want to ground this more. So we then did another take. We then did the more dramatic take. Now we had a slightly different take on the female, which I can tell you about if you're interested. And Kevin Wade came in after us, who had done some movies like Working Girl, Day of the Jackal. And he changed the character of Susan, largely. Bo Goldman at the end, at this point, God love Martin Brest, but he takes forever to develop a movie. At this point, he had done 3 movies in his career, he had done 3 movies in 10 years. Going in Style, Midnight Run, I forget the third one. And we had moved on at this point. I had kids. And Bo Goldman came in and did a dialogue polish. And when I, read the draft, I just thought, this is wonderful. This is really good. Really enjoyed the process. Martin was very gracious and is very generous in his compliments. And what the funny thing that happened though is Bo Goldman disappeared. He lives up in a wine country called Napa, California. He disappeared for like 10 months and came back with a whole new script. And Marty's head exploded. And he goes, no, I like this story, you don't understand. And that's one of the reasons the writing of that script took longer than it should have.
Anybody else? Any questions? Okay. The last question. What is your...
Before your last question, I have a question, but I was waiting that I'll ask this question towards the end. This is not about television. In America, there are so many filmmakers who have started working on virtual reality cinema, which is called the VR cinema.
Virtual reality cinema.
Even the Spielberg, he is doing. You're not aware of it?
Wait, I don't, I'm sorry,
It's a virtual reality cinema in which all 360 angle you can watch, you can move, you can see.
Virtual reality.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here Mr. A.R. Rahman has made a 45-minute film in virtual reality. It is being discussed all over the globe that this is next phase of cinema. Now that requires a new form and format of writing. So in making also there is no short division, there is nothing like that. Can you speak something about that? How to write? How
To me, though, that's just like black and white to color. Ultimately, it's about emotional connection. So it's only a tool to be used. It's 3D. I mean, you know, back in the 50s, because television was drawing the audience away from the theaters, you know, they had to go with something new, and they came up with 3D. You know, the old joke was you called the theater to say, what time's the movie start? They'd say, what time can you get here? Because everyone was home watching TV. So they were doing Cinerama. They were, you know, they were doing Todd Ale. They were doing 3D. This to me is, in the end, you still have to tell a story. You still have to have a character that you connect with emotionally. You still have to be, you know, so, I mean, look, I think it's going to be wonderful.
Yeah, because in this VR films, the only problem is you can see here, you can see
Yeah.
here. You're not following a director's vision. You can do anything.
Yeah, no, it's a little,
Yeah, whenever I
it's a
heard
little
people
daunting.
saying that we are just exploring how to write VR scripts.
Yeah, and that has to be taken into consideration, but the bottom line will not change.
Yeah, emotions.
Yeah, yeah, what's the emotional end?
How do you go about writing?
Well, if I can, well, I know we're talking TV, but the easiest way is for me to couch this in featured, if I may. There are 6 things I know before I start, and I work in 3-act structure. So I know what my start point is, I know what my end point is, I know where I'm beginning and ending. I know what my first act break is, because that's the point that consolidates, that manifests the conflict. I know what my second act break is, because that's the moment that demands resolution. And then I know the midpoint, which is what ups the stakes. I know those 5 things structurally, and then I'm very, very, very insistent on doing the theme. If I know that, all that white space in between those points starts to fill up. In terms of and that, I don't want to say always, because I've learned at different points in my career to learn those things, but since then that has always served me well. The other thing is I begin writing at 4 in the morning. That's, when I went back in the 90s in animation, I had to start, actually my alarm would go up at 3:20, I would hit the snooze, I'd get up at 3:30 and begin writing. Because,
Till what time?
hmm?
From 4 till what time?
Well, until I had to go into work and stop for breakfast, but then by the time I went into work, I probably had 4 hours of writing done. Because as a showrunner, the minute you get in, you sit down to casting, you have to deal with notes on this, you've got calls to make, or you get calls, and that was the only way to do it. So I actually didn't begin to like that, even on my own time, because it was the most focused time I had. And I used it very, very, you know, the sun isn't up, the birds aren't awake, it's just, you're just there with your thoughts. It is the best time of the day to write. And right now I write pretty much from 4 to 4. Always stopping for lunch, walking the dog, and breakfast, and yeah, but that's the physical nature of it.
To you as a writer, what comes first? Is it the theme that comes first,
No.
or is it the character that comes
No,
first?
it's the idea, and then the character, and then as you develop a story, the theme presents itself. No one sits down to write a theme. You sit down to write a plot, and eventually you go, oh, what I'm really trying to say is all men should be brothers. Okay, great. So how does this affect? You know, the example I used in the workshop, and I use it, is James Cameron's Aliens. It's really a film thematically about motherhood. Ripley, who in the first movie was just a space trucker with the men, we find out is actually a single mother. She didn't return for her daughter's 11th birthday. In fact, because she was traveling at hyperspeed, her daughter outlives her, dies of old age, while she's in space. She's sent back out to explore a planet where she discovers another little girl. She is determined to not fail that little girl like she feels she failed her daughter. But then it goes one step further. The alien in the first movie is basically an asexual parasite that needs a host body. Now we have the queen. And the queen is as determined to save its eggs as Ripley is to save Newt. All that because of that theme, the universality of motherhood. It's just brilliant. I mean, it's a chick flick. So yes, the theme comes as I've discovered in the story.
Okay, anybody else?
Yes, one question.
Yes, Manisha, the last one.
You get the last one.
Yeah.
About your collaboration with Steven Spielberg and how kind of it works. If you can elaborate.
Well, I'm glad no one asked me about the George Lucas one. Because that was one of my favorite scripts, and it's the only movie of his to lose money.
You can
Because,
speak about that, it's your...
well, I can, but it's such a tortured story. I will just say that he loved the script until we went into production, and then he rewrote us. And as I said the other day, it's a comedy, and he wouldn't know comedy if you kicked him in the ass. and there's so much more to it. Yeah, we had a great relationship with it. The first draft, we handed in, again, we came off Moonlight. This was supposed to be a romantic screwball comedy. We handed in our first draft, I got the dream call of a lifetime. I got 7 notes. And not, rewrite act 1, rewrite act 2. But no, it's just like on page 17, what do you mean by this line on page 23? Could this be funnier? I should have done a red flag. It actually went very, and Ron Howard was going to direct. And Ron Howard loved the script. Ron Howard falls away, and because Parenthood was such a big hit, he didn't want to follow that. He thought that was going to be his biggest comedy. He had also been developing the backdraft script. Decided to go into drama. Our loss. Things went downhill from there because George needs a strong director to keep him in check. He didn't have it. By the time the director he hired, oh dear, I wish I could take you through this story. It takes about 20 minutes. Next time, have me back and I'll tell you that story.
Okay, Ron, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Very honored to be here.